Welcome to the Tear Talk Podcast with author, coach, and speaker MaShani Allen. Known as the Golden Scribe, MaShani has over 2 decades of writing experience, and her passion for the craft has given her the opportunity to impart wisdom, affirmation, hope, and confidence into many. Let's listen now as MaShani delves into topics that have impacted her on her Tear Talk journey and helped her discover the power of the pen.
Welcome. So glad to have you all join on today with the Tear Talk podcast. I just wanted to share something with you that has been on my mind for a little bit. It's something that I've been considering for quite some time. Over the past few weeks on my social media, I've been providing different writing prompts and encouraging people to write and encouraging people to journal. And I found different quotes about journaling just to inspire people to begin to write and to begin to share. And as I've been thinking about writing and I've been thinking about the power of the pen, I started to think about how sometimes when we write our story, when we write about different circumstances and situations, even dreams, hopes, ideas, promises, there's something that we don't always take into account. And that word is factors. Factors. And the definition of factors, or factor, I'll say singularly, is a circumstance, a fact, or an influence that contributes to a result or an outcome. I'll say it again. A factor is a circumstance, a fact, or an influence that contributes to a result or an outcome. And I believe that this is important because sometimes when we write, we don't consider all of these things. And we can write a story or about a situation, and we can write it from a place of we didn't do well, we failed, we didn't accomplish something, we weren't successful. But have we considered fully the circumstance? Have we looked at all of the facts? Have we looked at everything that could have possibly influenced or contributed to that result or to that outcome? And I say this because even though writing is a good way for us to express ourselves, we also want to consider the fact that writing can be a place of healing as well. And if we don't consider the circumstances, all of the facts, and all of the influences, we could be missing a vital key that could shift our perspective, that could bring the healing that we're looking for. I've been able to have conversations with people over the past couple of weeks, and I've really tried to look at the big picture instead of just a portion of a situation. And in doing so, I've been able to help some individuals see things that they had not considered originally. Now, most of you who've been following me for quite some time know that I have been journaling my life from 2005 up until present day. And I can honestly say that when I've taken the time to look back over my writings, sometimes it might just be a page, sometimes it might be a whole month, I've been able to see the full picture instead of just the point that I saw when I was writing. And what I can appreciate about that is over time, my writing has increased to give full thought instead of just a moment. And I think that this is important because sometimes we can find ourselves beating ourselves up for things that are outside of our control. And as I was thinking about this podcast, I actually started thinking about math, which is my least favorite subject of all. But I started thinking about math and equations and how sometimes we have to factor something in. You know, it wasn't originally a part of the equation, but we have to add that X or we have to add that Y. We have to factor it in. And I think that when we look at our lives and we look at circumstances and even some of the hardest moments and the hardest situations, we have to make sure that we are factoring in the unknowns that contributed to our outcome. We have to factor in the unexpected that contributed to our results. We have to factor in the uncontrollables that contributed to what we have now experienced. And I think that when we allow ourselves to factor in those things, it really can help, I should say, us see the bigger picture and not put so much weight and responsibility on ourselves. Because with some situations, it was out of our hands. It was not in our control. Even as I'm doing this podcast, I think of people who started businesses in 2020 or who started businesses in probably the fall of 2019. No one knew that a pandemic was coming. No one knew that it would impact the whole world. That was something that could not be factored in. Just like in our lives, many times we can't factor in loss. We can't factor in accidents. We can't factor in pain. We can't factor in because a lot of times those things aren't premeditated. You know, that's not something that you put in the equation, but that's something that you can find in the equation of your life. And you have to make sure that you're not beating yourself up. You're not disqualifying yourself because of the unknown, because of what you can't even consider, because it's something that ends up factored in. It's outside of your control. It's outside of your wheelhouse. We couldn't have factored in a pandemic and everything that will come along with it. So as we are still in the beginning of a year, as some of us may be looking back as well as looking forward to this year, make room in your life and in your plans and in your dreams and in your desires. Make room for things to be factored in. Understand that some things aren't going to be fully linear. Some things, it's quite a journey. It's not just a straight line. Like I was having a conversation with a young lady just last week, and she's very, very gifted in different areas of her life. It's not just one area and not just one sphere of influence that she could impact. And I was sharing with her, sometimes it can be very challenging when you're multi-gifted. Like you can be a singer, you can be a mathematician, you can be a cook. Like it seems and this is just a very unique example, but it seems as though those three worlds would never cross. And with those three worlds, you would have to pick one to be good at. But why? If all three gifts were given to you, why do we feel as though we have to factor out two and only be good in one? What I told her in so many words is that her responsibility is to factor in being great at all three, being excellent at all three, but know that it may happen in different times and different seasons, and also factor in that all three may not intersect at the same time, but all three can bring you great experiences, great opportunities, and great results. I think that when we look at our lives, especially as a math equation, we do more subtracting than we do addition. And even if we do addition, many times we only feel as though it counts if it adds to our bank account. We don't consider that it counts when it adds to our character. We don't really consider, we don't factor in the power that comes when it adds to our character. We don't factor in the power that comes when it adds to our maturity. We don't factor in the power that comes when it adds to our creativity. We don't factor in the power that comes when it adds to our joy. So we have to begin to look at our life differently, and we have to look at what is factored in. Like, even when I look at some of the hardest circumstances and situations that I've had in my life, I can see now the different factors that came as a result, the different factors that contributed to the outcome. One of the greatest factors that I see is maturity and character building. And I think that the math equation that the mathematicians use, as opposed to the math equation that we use in our lives, are two different equations. But a lot of times we don't really sit back and look and see what has been factored in as a result of the different circumstances and experiences that we have had. And I think that if we go back and we really look, we will see more was added to us than taken from us. Even if it's in small amounts and small doses, if we can begin to acknowledge that, we will begin to see how full, how rich, how plentiful, and how just, I get the main word I hear, full our lives really are. The fullness of our life isn't based on the things that we quote unquote do. The fullness of our life is based on who we become. And I've just seen many people chasing things as opposed to chasing what is considered the best part, which is being a better you, a better person, having more to offer to people, and most importantly to yourself. And I've just really been considering all of the different factors when I look at my life. And even when I journal now, sometimes it takes me a little longer because I have to factor in so many aspects of the story. I have to factor in conversation. I have to factor in things that I've read. I have to factor in things that have been spoken to me previously. I have to factor all of that in. I have to consider it, and I have to add it to the story. It's so funny. I was journaling last week, and sometimes when I journal, like I might not journal that particular day, but I'll send myself an email of what happened on that day. And I found myself journaling last week and I forgot to look into my emails. So I had to pause journaling and I literally wrote on the top of the page, look at your email for this date. Because me not factoring in that situation would cause me to miss a pivotal key, some other things that I'm doing. So details are so important when you are looking at your life and you're factoring in, again, everything that contributed to your results and everything that contributes to the outcome. Because some things aren't all on us. Some things are the influence of others. Some things aren't all our responsibility. Some things are the result of the circumstances of where we are or who we've met or who we haven't met. So when we factor in all of those things, or we begin to consider that when we look at our story, when we look at our life, when we look at our dreams, I believe that that can help bring all of us down a notch and realize the responsibility isn't all on us, but the bulk of it is a result of us. Again, it's not all on us, but the bulk of the responsibility is us. You know, the bulk of the responsibility is us. But we also, again, have to consider all the factors, the circumstances, the facts, or the influence that contributes to a result or an outcome. Now, I think we have to be fair to ourselves. Like, a lot of times when I read the Bible, one thing that I've said a lot of times when I've taught classes on journaling and writing and different things like that, I really wish people in the Bible had journals. I really, really do. Because, we'll read their story, we'll read the account that has been given, and sometimes it wasn't even written by them. A lot of times it wasn't written by them. It's second and third hand accounts, but sometimes I think it would just be really interesting. I think the one person who probably got the most firsthand would be David, because he wrote a good amount himself, and then Solomon wrote a good amount himself. But it would be really interesting to know their thought process, when different things were happening, and, if they expressed if they shared with us the different factors, the different circumstances and situations that resulted in the outcome, the different things that they had to do. And then some stories, we do have that information, but for others, we don't. And all we can do is assume, all we can do is kind of put bits and pieces together to try and assess what they may have been thinking or what may have happened. But even that's not all the way fair, because culturally things were different. They thought differently. They didn't have the advances that we have now. So some of our advances cause us to think differently than they would have thought. So that's why a journal would have been a beautiful thing to have. But I just really want you all to be encouraged, as we are still pretty fresh. It's still only January in this year. I want you all to be encouraged as you look at your former, as you look at your now, and as you look at your next, that you don't disqualify and you don't discredit all the different factors that led to the results and the circumstances that you're currently in, that you've been in, and that you will be in. Again, don't put all of the weight on you, but know the bulk of the responsibility is you. But factors need to be considered as we process our lives, as we process our pain, as we process our joy, and as we process our dreams. I don't want you to carry a weight unnecessarily, because you didn't consider factors. Factors are important. They can be a game changer. They can shift it all, but they most definitely need to be considered. I pray that this podcast blessed you and that the next time you see that a Tear Talk podcast has posted, that you decide to press play.
Thank you for joining the Tear Talk podcast. You can purchase today's featured t-shirt and learn more about MaShani by visiting MaShaniAllen.com. Also, check out her exclusive line of custom journals at bit.ly/The Golden Scribe.